The stars outside the station window looked like quiet sparks, frozen in time. The space station Kepler Theta floated on the edge of the Orion Arm, surrounded by silence. Inside, the lights were dim, the corridors nearly empty. Only a few people worked this late, humans and Xylari alike. Dr. Elias Vance sat alone in Lab 3B, typing on his console. He rubbed his eyes and leaned back in his chair. The screen glowed with soft blue light. Most humans didn't take night shifts, but Elias didn't mind. He liked the quiet. It gave him time to think, and lately, it gave him a chance to see her. To single quotes, Lonnie, she was xyloratal, thin, with soft silver-green skin and long limbs. Her face was smooth and sharp, with deep violet eyes that never blinked too fast. She moved with grace, almost like she floated instead of walked. Elias had noticed her before. Everyone on the station knew her. She was a lead biologist from the Xylari Science Corps, but after the war, she had changed. Her bondmate had died during the Earth-Xylari conflict. Elias didn't know the full story, only that her mate died protecting a human colony ship. It was strange. Most Xylari mourned in silence, away from others, but Talani had returned early. She didn't speak much. She didn't cry, but she stayed late in the lab. Every night, and always during Elias's shift. At first, he thought it was a coincidence. Then it happened again and again. Now it was routine. He came in, and an hour later, she arrived. She didn't say much. Sometimes, not even a word. Just sat at her station across from him and worked quietly. Tonight was no different. Elias heard the soft sound of the door opening behind him. He turned. Talani walked in, carrying a small datapad. She looked around the lab, her eyes pausing for just a moment on Elias. Then she walked to her usual seat and began working. "Evening," Elias said gently. She nodded once. "Evening." That was more than usual. He smiled a little, then turned back to his screen. Minutes passed. Soft tapping of keys filled the room. The hum of the air vents was the only other sound. Outside, the stars kept shining. Elias watched her from the corner of his eye. She sat straight, focused, her hands moving fast over her controls. But there was something in her posture, tired, not relaxed. He cleared his throat. "Don't have to be here, you know. The system update won't finish until morning." Planny paused. She didn't look at him. "I know. Just surprised you're working on a backup project." This late, she looked at him now. Her eyes were steady, unreadable. "I work better at night. Less noise," Elias nodded. He knew that feeling. They sat in silence for a while longer. Then she spoke again. "You listen to music." He blinked. "Sometimes you play it low, but it is there. Human songs." Elias smiled, a little surprised. "Old earth jazz. Helps me think?" She nodded slowly. "My mate used to play sounds when he worked, not music. Ocean recordings. Earth's oceans." I did not understand why. He said nothing. He just listened. Plani looked down at her hands. "Now, let's listen to." Sometimes Elias leaned forward slightly. "Do you miss him?" A long pause. Then quietly she said, "Yes." That one word carried more weight than 1,000. Elias felt it. "I'm sorry," he said. She didn't respond, but she didn't turn away either. After a moment, she stood up and walked over to the window. She looked out into the stars. Her tall figure was silhouetted by the light. She looked like a statue, still calm, but full of emotion hidden deep. Inside, Elias joined her at the window. "They say, Xylari, don't show feelings," he said softly. "But I don't believe that." Tlani was quiet. Then she said, "It is not that we do not feel. We are taught to hold it inside. To be strong, to not disturb the calm." Elias looked at her. Sometimes strength is sharing, not hiding. She looked at him, really looked. Her eyes shimmered slightly, not with tears, but something else. Respect? Curiosity? He wasn't sure, I think. She began, then paused. I think that is something I do not yet understand. You don't have to, Elias said. Not now, but maybe one day. She turned back to the stars. People think healing is forgetting. But I do not want to forget him. You don't have to, he replied. You just have to keep going. Silence fell again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It felt like peace. After a while, Tlani turned back to her station. I will finish the backup now, she said. Elias smiled. I'll be here. She sat down and he returned to his seat as well. For the next hour, they worked together, side by side. No more words, no more explanations. It's just quiet understanding. Outside the window, a new star blinked into view. Inside, two beings once from warring worlds sat in silence, and though they didn't say it, they both knew. She didn't stay late for the work. She stayed to be near him. The days passed quietly on Kepler Theta. The station moved in its orbit like a silent watcher of the stars. People came and went, systems ran smoothly, and reports flowed like clockwork. But inside Lab 3B, something small and quiet had started to change. Tlani still came late at night. She still said little. But now she looked at Elias more often. Sometimes she would stand near him, not speaking, just watching his screen or listening to his music. Elias didn't mind. In fact, he had started leaving the soft jazz playlist running each night just in case she liked it. He never asked why. She came, and she never explained. Tonight was no different. The lab was quiet except for the gentle hum of machines and the faint rhythm of a saxophone playing from Elias's speaker. He sat reviewing data on crop growth simulations, his eyes half tired but focused. Tlani entered as usual, without noise, without announcement. She moved like shadow and light, her steps soft. She took her seat across the room, and for a while, they both worked in silence. Elias didn't speak. He had learned not to force conversation. She would speak if she wanted to. After some time, he noticed she wasn't typing. He looked up, till Tlani was watching the screen where the music visuals pulsed in slow, colorful waves. The animation moved in sync with the song, a soft blue glow fading in and out. You like it? Elias asked. She turned her head slightly, her violet eyes calm. It is calming. He smiled. It helps me think. Makes the lab feel alive. She stood and walked slowly toward the screen. Your music has emotion. You make sound. To feel. It's part of being human, Elias said. We feel a lot. Sometimes too much. She looked at him. It is strange. Your people show pain openly. Cry, laugh, sing. Zalari do not. I noticed, he said softly. But you came back. Early. From morning? I was not ready to be alone, she replied, voice low. And yet I cannot return to what I had. My life is quiet now. Elias nodded. Same after the war. I lost friends. Patients. There are names I still remember. Every night before I sleep. She stared at him for a moment.
Oh.
Do you speak their names? Sometimes, Elias said. To myself. It helps me remember they mattered. Tlani looked away. Her hands moved slowly, fingers brushing the edge of the console table. My mate's name was Keller. Elias remained quiet. He waited. Was not a warrior. He was a linguist. He taught me to understand your people's languages. He liked your books, especially stories with, what did he call it? She paused. Happy endings? Elias smiled gently. That sounds like a good man. He was, she whispered. The room fell silent again. Elias could feel the weight in the air, but not the heavy kind. It was something real, honest. You don't have to talk about him, Elias said, but if you want to, I'll listen. Tlani nodded once, then walked back to her seat. She picked up her datapad but didn't start working. Instead, she stared at it quietly. I thought pain would go away, she said after a long pause. I thought time would make it smaller, but it only changed shape. Elias turned in his chair to face her. Yeah, that's grief. It doesn't disappear. You just learn how to carry it. She tilted her head slightly. You speak as if you know. I was a field medic, he said. Saw more death than I ever wanted. I still remember faces. Some of them, I never even got their names. Talani looked down. You carry them too? He nodded. All the time. They sat together, not working, just sitting in the middle of that quiet night. The jazz music shifted to a slower tune, soft piano keys blending into the background suddenly. Talani reached forward and gently touched the small speaker on Elias's desk. Her long fingers paused over it. What is this called? She asked. It's called Autumn Waltz, Elias replied. Composed on Earth. About 300 years ago. It sounds sad. It is. But it's beautiful too. Talani looked at him. How can something be both? Elias thought for a second. Because sadness is part of beauty. Sometimes it reminds us we're alive. Talani turned away, returning to her seat. You feel deeply, Elias Vance. That is a strength. Chuckled quietly. Some might say it's a weakness, and they do not understand what strength truly is. The words hung in the air like a quiet truth. After that, they both returned to their work. For the next hour, the room was calm again, but something had shifted. The silence between them was no longer cold. It was comfortable. When the system's clock beeped 00:00, Talani stood. I will return tomorrow, she said. Elias looked up from his console. You always do. She didn't smile. Zalari didn't smile like humans did. But her eyes held a softness he hadn't seen before. As she walked to the door, she paused. Thank you for remembering names. Then she was gone. Elias sat alone. Again, but the room didn't feel empty. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and let the soft music play on. Outside the station, stars kept shining. Inside, something quiet had begun to bloom. The station lights flickered again. Not for the first time that week. Elias Vance sighed and tapped the panel beside him. The backup power system had been acting strange lately. He sent in a repair request yesterday, but no one came, just as he was about to shut down the console. The lab's main lights dimmed, and then everything went dark. Not again, he muttered. Emergency lighting turned on faint blue strips along the walls. Elias stood and grabbed a portable power unit from the cabinet.
After he worked, the door slid open.
It was Talani. Her tall frame stood quietly in the doorway, the soft light making her silver-green skin glow faintly. She glanced around the dim room, then walked inside. System failure? She asked calmly. Yeah, Elias replied. Power surge again? She walked over to the backup panel without asking. Her long fingers moved quickly, connecting wires and resetting modules. Elias watched in silence for a moment, then joined her. For the next hour, they worked side by side. The room was quiet except for the soft sound of tools clicking and systems restarting. Elias handed her a tool. This is the third time this week. The engineers are overloaded. Then we fix it ourselves, she said simply. He smiled. I like the way you think. She glanced at him. You are not like other humans, Elias raised an eyebrow. That's a good thing, I hope. Talani paused. You speak gently. You do not rush to fill silence. It is ... different. I've seen enough chaos. I like quiet now. She nodded, then turned back to her work. Keller liked quiet too. Elias grew still. You never told me much about him, he said gently. Talani sat down on a nearby bench. She held the tool in her hands like a memory. He was not a soldier, she began. He was a linguist. Loved words, said understanding. A language is the first step to understanding a heart. Elias sat beside her, listening. We bonded young, she continued. Our pairing was rare based on thought, not just duty. He believed Zalarian humans would one day share more than science. Sounds ... hopeful. He was. She looked down at the floor. He died trying to protect a human ship. The same people our leaders once called enemies. Some say it was foolish, that he forgot who he was. Elias shook his head. He remembered who he wanted to be. That's brave. Silence returned for a while, then Elias said softly, Do you miss him every day? Talani nodded slowly. Yes, but the pain has changed. It's no longer sharp, just ... deep. I know that kind, Elias replied. It becomes part of you. She looked at him again. Her violet eyes were soft this time, not distant. "Since I met you," she said, "the silence inside me feels less cold." Elias didn't speak. He only looked at her, letting her words settle between them. Suddenly, the console beeped. The power was returning. They both stood and walked over to check the system. "All stable now," Talani confirmed. "Well done," Elias smiled. "You too." As they packed away the tools, she hesitated. "I have a question," she said. "Ask." "If I bond again, not officially, but in heart, ... will that dishonor his memory?" Elias thought for a long moment. Then he answered, "I think holding on to love doesn't mean you can't find it again. You don't have to stop loving someone who's gone, but you're allowed to live." Talani looked away. "Our ways say that once bonded, the heart must remain closed. But I feel ... something has started to open again." "It doesn't have to bloom all at once," Elias said. "Some things grow slowly." She looked at him again, and for the first time, she smiled. Not with her mouth, Solari. Didn't do that, but with her eyes. Warm, clear, alive. They didn't speak for a long time after that. Just stood together, watching the stars through the lab's wide window. A human and a Zalari. Two souls carrying grief. Two lives learning how to bloom again. Later that night, after she had gone, Elias sat at his console, writing in his journal. Something changed tonight. She spoke of him finally, and of feelings, quiet ones, but real. "We fixed the power. But something else was repaired too. Maybe not fully, but the pieces are starting to fit." He closed the journal and looked at the empty seat she always used. She stayed late again, not for the power systems, not for the work, but for something unspoken, something beginning. The lights in Lab 3B flickered softly as the night shift began once again. Elias Vance sat at his usual station, sipping warm coffee and checking diagnostics. The lab was quiet, the way he liked it. Peaceful. He didn't have to wait long. Talani walked in, silent, graceful, and as usual, without speaking. She moved to her desk with her datapad and began working. Elias had stopped pretending her visits were random. He knew now. She stayed late for a reason, but they didn't talk about it. That was their way. A quiet understanding, soft rhythm of shared presence. No need to ask why she came, no need to say what they were feeling. Still, something had changed. Talani had started to sit closer, not right beside him, but no longer at the far end of the room. She watched the music visuals more, sometimes even hummed, softly, barely noticeable, but Elias heard it. It made him smile. He clicked on a file and looked across at her. "Running system tests again?" he asked. "Yes," she said, "mostly. I like the quiet." Elias nodded. "Same here." They worked for a while in silence. Then Talani spoke, her voice soft. "You have a strange strength, Elias Vance." He looked up, surprised. "Me?" "Yes. You speak of pain without shame. You carry grief, but it does not crush you." Elias thought for a moment. "Maybe it's because I'm not carrying it alone anymore." Talani looked at him, her eyes searched his face as if trying to understand a human language that had no words. He added, "Talking helps, and sometimes just being near someone helps more." Talani looked away. In Zalari culture, we do not form new bonds after loss. It is said to dishonor the memory of the one who is gone. So that sounds ... hard, Elias said gently. It is what we are taught. But sometimes ... Wonder if the lesson is wrong. Elias didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned the music up just slightly. Soft piano tune played slow and warm. "I think remembering someone is not the same as being frozen in the past," he said. "We honor them by living, not by staying empty." She looked down at her hands. "Keller used to say that humans felt with their whole being. Now, I begin to see what he meant." The lab door suddenly slid open with a sharp sound. A tall man in a dark uniform stepped in. Elias stood up quickly. It was Commander Rourke, the station's human liaison officer. "Talani," Rourke said with a firm voice. "May I have a word with you?" She stood without emotion, of course.
Dad!
They walked outside the lab, leaving Elias alone. He felt uneasy. Something about Rourke's tone had been too formal, too sharp. A few minutes passed before Tlani returned. She sat down again. Slowly, almost like something inside her had cracked. "What was that about?" Elias asked. "They are concerned," she said. "About what?" She paused. "That I spend too much time here with you." Elias frowned. "Is that a problem? In Zalari society, emotional closeness between species is ... rare and often." Discouraged, Elias leaned back, shaking his head. "But we're not doing anything wrong." "No, but feelings ... they frighten people, especially when they do not fit inside the rules." They sat in silence again. This time it felt heavier. "Do you want to stop coming here?" Elias asked quietly. Tlani turned to face him. "No." Waited. "I stay because something inside me feels light again. It is not betrayal. It is life returning." Elias felt warmth in his chest. A mix of relief and something deeper. "I want you to stay," he said softly. She looked down. "Even if it causes trouble?" "I don't care," Elias said. "Let them talk. Let them question. You're not breaking any rule by healing." A faint sound escaped her, half sigh, half breath. Suddenly the station lights dimmed in a red. Light blinked at the edge of the console. "Power dip in the habitat wing," Elias muttered. "I'll run a check." They worked together, side by side, solving the issue like a small team. No need for words, just action. When it was done, they returned to their seats. Tlani spoke again, but this time her voice was barely a whisper. "My people think healing is betrayal." Elias looked at her. "And maybe it's time for new thoughts." She stared at him, and for the first time, her hand reached out, not touching, but close. Close enough that if either of them moved, their fingers would meet. But they didn't. Not yet. Instead, she said, "When I am near you, I remember who I am, not just who I lost." Elias felt his chest tighten. Not with pain, but something stronger. Hope, he smiled. "Then stay. As long as you need." She nodded. "I will." And with that, they returned to their quiet work. The lab felt warmer now, brighter even in the low light. Outside the station, the stars still shone. Inside, two people from two worlds sat close, not as strangers. It's not as enemies, but something new. Something not yet named. And though no one said the words, they both knew. She stayed late, not for the work, but to be near him. For the first time in months, Elias Vance felt like the night shift had meaning. Tlani's quiet presence had become the most stable part of his days. They didn't need to say much. Just knowing she would come made everything feel lighter. But peace never lasts long in space. One evening, Elias came to Lab 3B and noticed something strange. The lab was dark. Tlani wasn't there. He checked the time. She was always 5 minutes early. Tonight, she was late. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Still, no sign of her. Elias stood up, heart beating faster, and checked the internal station logs. His eyes narrowed. Lani Xylari, Science Officer. Status: transferred to Lab 7D Xylari Sector. By order of Commander Rourke and Xylari Council Representative Rithas, his chest tightened. Transferred. Without warning, he left the lab at once. Elias moved quickly through the station's corridors. The Xylari wing was quieter than usual, its tall halls lined with glowing vines and soft green lighting. He reached Lab 7D and waited by the sealed door. He wasn't allowed inside. A soft sound made him turn. Lani stood behind the glass wall. She looked surprised, a little sad. She approached and pressed a hand to the glass. Elias did the same, mirroring her. "I heard you were moved," he said, voice low. She nodded. "They say my behavior was ... unfit." Elias frowned. "What does that even mean?" "They believe I've grown too close to a human, that I've forgotten my duty to Xylari traditions." "That's ridiculous," Elias said. "We didn't do anything wrong." "No," she replied softly. "But sometimes, feelings are enough to cause fear." They stood there for a long moment, separated by the transparent wall. It felt heavier than 1,000 miles. "Will you come back to Lab 3B?" he asked. "I'm not allowed," she answered. "For now," he sighed. "So what happens now?" She looked at him. "We adapt, like we always have." Before he could respond, a Xylari officer entered the room and spoke to Tlani. She nodded, and gave Elias one last look before turning away. The glass wall stayed silent. Back in Lab 3B, Elias felt the emptiness all over again. The quiet music still played, the lights still glowed gently, but without her, the lab felt cold. He sat down and stared at the small copper pendant on his desk. It was shaped like a Xylari starflower design Tlani once admired in an old Earth archive. He had made it for her from old station scraps. He hadn't given it to her yet. Now he wondered if he ever could. The next day, Elias sent a message to Commander Rourke. It was calm, respectful, but clear. "She hasn't broken any rules. Neither have I. She's not just a scientist. Someone healing after a great loss. If that's a threat to diplomacy, maybe the problem isn't us." There was no reply, but later that evening, something changed. Tlani returned, but not to Lab 3B. She waited near the garden dome. It was a quiet space at the edge of the station, filled with earth plants and Xylari crystal trees. The dome faced the stars, and inside, it always smelled like green life. Elias found her there, standing alone. "I wasn't sure if you'd come," he said. "They gave me permission to speak with you," she said. "In public space only, under observation." Elias sighed. Still treating us like criminals for talking, she turned to him. "The peace between our people is fragile. Any small thing can disturb it, even friendship." He looked at her. "Is that what this is? Just friendship?" Tlani didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her robe and pulled out something small, the copper pendant. "You left this in my old workspace," she said. "I made it for you," Elias replied. She held it gently. "It is imperfect. The edges are not smooth, but it is beautiful, like feelings," he said. She looked at him. "I am not ready for another bond. My people would never accept it. Maybe I would never accept it." "I understand," Elias said. "But I want to be near you," she added. "I want the same." They sat together on a bench, watching the stars. A soft silence filled the air. "I started writing again," she said. "Not science reports. Thoughts. Emotions." In my own voice, Elias smiled. "That's brave. It feels ... dangerous, but right." He looked at her. "You're not alone, Tlani, not anymore." She turned her head. "Then let us walk slowly, not as mates, not as strangers. But as to who understand?" Agreed. They sat for a long time without talking, listening to the gentle hum of the station and the quiet of the stars. The next week, Elias noticed something strange. Other Xylari began asking him questions, not about war or science, but about music, about stories, about how humans mourn and heal. Something had shifted, quietly, gently. Tlani had spoken, it seemed, shared more than science, shared her heart. The spark between them had not been destroyed. It had spread. The day had been long. Elias Vance sat alone in the garden dome, watching earth flowers sway under artificial lights. His shift had ended, but he didn't return to his quarters. Not yet. The station was quiet tonight, peaceful, and yet something inside him stirred Dash waiting. He held a data pad in his lap. The screen showed a message. Joint Cultural Council meeting minus 1,800 hours speakers. Dr. Elias Vance, human representative. Tlani Xylari Science Cord. He had read it 5 times already. Still couldn't believe it. The peace talks had hit a rough patch. Whispers of distrust had grown stronger. Some Xylari council members believed emotional closeness between species weakened discipline. Some humans, too, feared cultural change. But someone had suggested an idea, a shared testimony. From those who had felt the effects of peace, not just in politics, but in the heart, that someone Elias knew, to Ben Tlani. He looked up. She was already walking toward him. Talani's footsteps were soft but confident. She wore a new robe, silver and deep blue, the colors of Xylari renewal. Her face was calm, but her eyes held that quiet spark Elias had come to know so well. "I thought you might come early," he said, standing to greet her. "I always come early," she replied. He smiled, ready for this. "No," she said, "honestly, but I will do it." They walked side by side toward the council chamber. For the first time, no glass wall separated them. No orders, no silence. Just two voices, walking forward together. The council chamber was wide and bright. Human and Xylari leaders sat on opposite sides, translators quietly working between them. Dozens of eyes turned as Elias and Talani entered. They stood at the center platform, facing both species. A quiet signal buzzed. It was time Elias spoke. "First, my name is Elias Vance. I served as a medic in the war. I saw death, pain, and silence. But after the war, I saw something else too. I saw healing. Not through orders or rules, but through connection." He paused. "Talani lost someone in that war. Her mate died saving a human ship. She had every reason to turn away from us, but she didn't." Looked at her. She nodded. "Ta, ta, ta, ta." Single quotes. Lonnie stepped forward. "My name is Talani. I was bonded once. That bond is gone. I returned to work because I feared the silence of mourning. I feared forgetting. But in the quiet of the lab, I found something unexpected." Her voice grew stronger. "I found someone who did not try to fix me, who only listened. A human, not a warrior, not a leader, but a friend." A murmur spread through the room. "I did not betray my bond," she continued. "I honored it, by living, by choosing to feel again. My people believe grief must be hidden, but I say healing must be shared." She looked across the room. "And if that frightens you, then perhaps we need to rethink what peace truly means." But long silence followed. Then, from the Xylari side, one council elder stood and spoke. "Your words are not weakness, Talani. They are rare truth. Perhaps it is time we learn." Later that night, Elias returned to Lab 3B. The lab was empty, as it had been for days. He walked slowly to his desk and sat down. The music player was still there. He turned it on. Soft jazz filled the air. Then he heard the door open. Talani entered, calm and silent. She moved to the window, just like old times, and stared at the stars. Elias stood beside her. "I didn't think they'd let you work here again." "Said they didn't," she replied. He raised an eyebrow. "I came anyway." He smiled. "You always do." They stood in silence, side by side. The stars outside shimmered, distant and steady. "You're not afraid?" he asked. "I was," she said, "but not now." He nodded slowly. "So what happens next?" Turned to face him. "We work. We grow. We stay late. Maybe." He laughed quietly. "And if they say something, then let them," she said. He looked at her, really looked. Her posture was relaxed now. Her voice no longer carried the weight of fear. She had changed, but so had he. Talani walked over to his desk. She picked up the copper pendant. "He had made you never gave this to me properly," she said. He shrugged. "I wasn't sure if I should." She held it up. "I'm glad you did." Then she placed it gently around her neck. "I will keep this," she said, "not as a symbol of loss, but of choice." Elias stepped closer. "I'm glad you stayed. Late." She looked up at him, eyes soft. "I stay late," she said, "because when I am near you, I remember how to breathe." They sat together, the soft music playing between them. No more rules. No more fear. Just two souls, different but alike. Finding peace where war once lived, and outside the station, the stars continued to shine. But inside, she stayed late, not because of duty, not because of loss, no, but simply to be near him.